All right, ladies and gentlemen. So right now on the screen, we get no other person but Mr. Matthew Momoh, somebody way very, very important for dinner with me. Hello, Mr. Momoh. How you dey do, sir?
I do very well, sir. Thank you, Mr. Sherif.
Yeah, and
How
anyway,
you say?
before we go further, we want to take this opportunity for let viewers they know you. So kindly, sir, can you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Well, just like you say, my name is Matthew Momoh, and currently I don't in the United States for quite a while. And uh, going back to the 1980s, I don't begin for be I don't work as a journalist. I work as a journalist here in Leone City, Houston. I work for the former Houston Post as a beat reporter. And then from there, I switch over to the Houston Chronicle, which still is running as also an area and street reporter. So, I work for them two organizations today for a total of maybe 5 years combined. Then after that, I actually spent another 10 years working for what you would call the, you know, not that time we didn't call them social media, we call them media of the people. So we they deal with issues and whether in the community. So we the report on the communities, when they gather facts and assessments then and present them to people then in public offices, the governor, the mayor, Congress people, then people in Ghana and this. So we've been trying to make sure the people don't understand how they come. But that not to mean just the other thing. For almost 25 years, I'm a broadcast journalist at the city. I've been there. I host a number of programs, and some of them you can still get them on the internet if you Google my name, Matthew Momoh, Matthew two T's and Momoh Momoh. They are still available for the Pacifica Network stations, and quite a number of times I've been also report for the national network for Pacifica. We go all throughout the United States. So I do that one day for 20, maybe 24 years. And I just feel like, say, timing come for make a move on. I move into the humanitarian sector. I open up a humanitarian organization where we call SLAO, Saving Lives Through Alternate Options. And then we focus on the needs of the minorities. The city of Houston, obviously that led me to become interested in international work. So I joined UNHCR, and then I've been going to Democratic Republic of Congo, which I worked for almost a decade, managing as country director, managing programs in Eastern DR Congo. So now just a quick short thing that one day, also after the Haitian earthquake, I got hired by an American NGO for make I go set up them programs them, and I traveled through the length and breadth of Haiti, setting up programs for the victims of the earthquake. Then I come back and can settle in the United States, and as Mr. Sheriff, I don't teach now the Houston Community College and Lone Star Colleges for the last almost 8 years now, and I thank God at least I pass my knowledge on to other people then. So that's not just in a nutshell. There's much more to it, but in the interview they do not list out about me now for the people that don't know what you make a day now. And let just wrap them up by saying that when I graduate from university, immediately upon graduation, the Society of Professional Journalists, which is the big organization of journalists in this country, in America, award me a scholarship because I come as the first person in a class of 7,000 students. I've been the first among all of the 7,000, and they will include the schools of law, schools of business, schools of education. So I got that scholarship. There were only 3 of us in the entire state of Texas, me from Texas Southern University, one gentleman from Texas A&M, and one from the University of Texas. So I've been around the block for a little while, as we can say.
Wow. So what a wealth of experience you get. And of course, in fact, that give we the delight for get somebody like you so for talk to with viewers them, fellow Sierra Leoneans about that profession. And so you talk say you spent about 25 years doing journalism in what city? In Houston, Texas, in the United States?
Yes, actually in Houston, but Houston have been my base, but more generally, I've been to work outside of Houston. I, I do over, by last count, maybe over 300 media interviews with the BBC, with Voice of America, Radio Deutsche Welle, and CNN, which we are a good friend. We know they work again for CNN. But I had interviews on African issues, and some of the people that I interviewed for your audience, the late Jerry Rawlings of Ghana, the former president of Ghana, President Sassou Nguesso of Congo Brazzaville, President Joseph Kabila of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course, the former president of Haiti, Reverend and Dr. Aristide. So these were some of the highlights of my professional journalism career, which took me around the country, and eventually every time I can travel, I can always carry my journalistic hat. So even if I didn't at London, I can always pass through. I get some friends in the BBC where I can meet, and most of the time I can always extend invitation for me. I can appear on one of them programs. So yeah.
Okay. Yes. A wealth of experience. So Mr. Momoh, I know you for being somebody who get very serious interest in the furtherance of development in Sierra Leone, and this being term, I know say you can't do an assessment, but this being term, me particularly, when I don't look at the Sierra Leonean journalists at the country, the way that they do their work, I am not impressed at all. I mean, I don't know if not so other people than they think. But we get you now, so for let you give your own professional assessment of journalism in Sierra Leone based on what you don't observe. What you go tell viewers them?
Well, make I put them this way. Since I know the practice in the theater in Sierra Leone, make I put me assessment as a very broad overview of what in journalism for be and what in journalism not for be. So let's take say the average journalist, you job that for number one, gather the facts, number two, report the story, and number three, keep yourself out of the fact, out of the story. If today you look at journalism, not just in Sierra Leone, but along the west coast of Africa, and in fact in Africa in general, journalists them want for imitate, say, waiting and they see on TV, whether it's from the CNN or the MSNBCs, waiting and they see with these reporters in the West. Well, there's a difference between the journalists that will get in the United States or the Western journalists and the journalists in Africa. You have to always remember for say, you the report, you have to report with the cultural framework in mind. So for the longest time, when they get people that when they fly in, we call them firefighter journalists. They come on at the West, drop into Freetown, 1 or 2 days, and then we call them, say, they're experts from Sierra Leone. Then they report on the story on Sierra Leone. Well, those of us who are from Sierra Leone, we will know it in the Sierra Leone framework. We can always look at them reports and say, why then people had to report this way? Why? So if we get questions with them people there, some of them we don't come from, back in we have colleagues. I can always tell them, say, what you report, per se, not good. They can always say, well, Matthew, I had a few hours to stay in that country, therefore I may report this way. But now let's look at the journalism within Australia or West Africa. What do they want to do? If you look at their reporting style, which style you feel they emulate? They want for report like they are BBC reporters. Well, they are not. The BBC reporters are in a different category. They are reporting from a different style manual. my question to the Sierra Leonean Journalism Association is, which style manual do they follow? Now this country will follow specific style manuals, the way you do write. If you're a print journalist, if you're a broadcast journalist, there's a print journal where manual where they follow, where they tell you the do's and the don'ts. In Sierra Leone, it looks like say they don't get guardrails. People, anybody can jump in and claim for say in a journalist. Well, this they give a bad name to the profession because the true journalist knows guardrails and the way enough across. The journalist, the citizen journalist, and it's okay to have them. The citizen journalists they tend to be somebody where they report based on emotions, and reporting not for be an emotional issue. It will be based on the facts. If you observe something, you interview the people them way they inside where be concerned. You look at both sides. We call this objectivity. You have to be objective. Only report the facts that your audience determine what they want to do with them facts and it. So right now in Sierra Leone and in most African countries, what if you say they do, Mr. Sherix, then they politicize then journalism. Therefore, if you don't put yourself in one corner, what will happen is the framework from which you report will reflect that framework where that particular political party where you affiliate yourself with, they do. So we always warn young journalists, even when they train journalists in Nayana college, where they teach them, and they always tell them for say their role not to the role of being inside the story. Then the people they for the outside the story, let them report.
Right.
Tell what happened based on what you observe, not what the reports hearsay. A reporter where they give you hearsay don't know what they do. And they sit down there a lot where they watch Sierra Leone television or they watch Sierra Leone print media or all of these citizen journalists. So the state of journalism in Sierra Leone at this point really, again, I don't want to use a very wide paintbrush for paint everybody. There are some very good journalists in Sierra Leone, but we do have a whole lot of them where really the only opportunity they get is for them be in front of a microphone and express things the way they're not supposed to express.
So Mr. Momoh, we know say recently the country we don't go through a little bit of social argument around this musical artist by the name of LAJ. And a lot of journalists then be involved in reporting on some of the activities then, or even conducting interviews them. So we want for make you go tell we so that we know practically waiting have been some of your observations where journalists then they report on that issue. They waiting you observe where you know say it being professional and waiting not being professional.
Well, now start with the professional part first. A few of the journalists where I actually watch, and I'm not going to name them here, actually try to do the right thing. They looked at both sides of the story. They interviewed the victims then they try to interview the people them way actually be involved in the fracas. Then they go beyond that, then go into the official area, talk to the police, talk to the people that will be involved in that whole thing. They forget all the sides and then they write a very reasoned, report on what they don't get from all of them sides there. That might be the best part of the Sierra Leone journalists as I observe them. The worst part of the Sierra Leone journalists who I observe is, they take things into the framework of who this will benefit if we skew the facts them in a different direction. We skew them towards one political party or the other. Now, once you don't do that one day, you don't create a problem. A good friend of mine, and of course, I did an audio note which I shared, and I understand it didn't go viral. And one of the things that I've been observing down there is a good friend of mine, when we report for the BBC, everybody know him. Now we report on Sierra Leone. His initial report was one that was very much not the kind of reporting you expect from a high-level journalist. What you observe instead, a journalist will be the try for go with the flow. That is not the role of the journalist. The role of the journalist is to report the facts. And where I raised the issue today, if you notice, for say, BBC call them back the next time, then do the type of interview with me and you they do now, or let them go for straightening out the mess. Basically, they understood that the criticism was fair and it was in place.
Right.
Now, this we need for do. We need for, when we see things them not right, we need for make sure that the people them where they listen to we, where they understand, where they want to know what thing they do, then this will understand why we do them and waiting at the ways and what they do them, the correct and the wrong way, Mr. Sherix.
Right. So I may also want for, if there is a way for let you go put into context as to the responsibilities or the job performance of journalists in our country, how that one did they contribute to either make or break a country? You know, is there any way you can enlighten us?
Yes. I'll give you a very good example where every African perhaps is very aware of Rwanda. And I worked in Rwanda for a little while. Here's what happened. Before the genocide began in Rwanda, the means of propagation of that propaganda day, there being both print and broadcast journalism. The print journalism began to call one tribe by a particular name would be very offensive to them people then did. The broadcast journalism then take that message, then triple the manifold of waiting and they talk. Then begin for show things them where leads to people them becoming excited and angered by waiting and they see. Because one thing for reading is different than when you see them. So when you begin for a read in Sierra Leone, people then they just throw words like, you know, this tribe is this Mendecrat, this not Creole, this not Limba. These things then get very, very, very bad effect in the long run. Because what thing that happen is outsiders are watching us. Then they see what thing would they say about reset. Then they see what thing they do to reset. In the end, what do you think they will think about us? Creole man or Shalom man say, if host not sell you, treat not will buy you. No, so
right.
So if we the host we sell, what do you expect the treat for do for?
Right.
When people then they act as journalists and then therefore be careful waiting then and they talk about because it affects the social, moral, and political standing of Sierra Leone in the international community. Therefore, we therefore be very mindful when we say Sierra Leone. What do we say about Sierra Leone? If you get a beef with a particular political party or particular government, please, by all means, you get the rights and for you express them things and they. But for let you begin to call, say for example, now the government in power in Sierra Leone. If you call that government a regime, there's a qualitative difference between a government and a regime. If you say somebody they run a regime, like His Excellency Dr. Julius Madabio, we know for say that a government will get way that democratically elected government. But every time you read some of these newspapers or you listen to some of these broadcast journalists, they are calling it a regime. Any sober-minded investor no want to go put in money aside a regime the rule rather than a government. Would you do that, Mr. Sheriff, or the listeners? Nobody would want to do that.
So Mr. Momoh, do you think it is because they just want for use them for political reason, or they do not understand when they use the word regime?
I think saying a lack of understanding of the basic word regime, because you know people they throw words them out, they're not able to try to pay attention to which that word what it mean. So let me look at regime. When you talk about regime, what do you think of? You know, one, now a dictatorship. Two, now a military government of some sort of regime, or a totalitarian regime. None of them things they happen to in Sierra Leone. If anybody wants to say that, I'm willing to listen to you. But bring the facts them to me. Show me the facts. Not go on your emotion, not go on your political leanings. So we need to educate the journalists in Sierra Leone, but let them begin for watch the words and when they use and how do they use them words and
right. And so the other thing also, what's in the responsibility of journalists then when it comes to fairness? Are they supposed to be afraid to talk about government? Are they supposed to feel free to talk the facts? Waiting them for which mood them for they in doing their job?
Mr. Sheriff, a journalist this is what journalism that is third peg of a free society. Mm-hmm. The journalist in job now for report on the things that will happen at the country, whether in good or bad, report them as you see them. Right. If, for example, you find out for say your neighborhood, they can't dump poison there. Mm-hmm. They can't dump waste. We're not supposed to do that. You get for tell the government, you get for react for say, this way it will affect my family, it will affect my community. This is the right of a journalist to go investigate. What you make una choose that particular neighborhood day for go put them things in the day? What you make una not choose for go put on a different neighborhood? That's the role of a journalist. You're not going to be afraid if what you report not the facts. You only get to be afraid if you begin to align yourself with the wrong facts and you try to make things make you show for say you curry favor with somebody else. This is not the problem with journalists and they run into. If you are free, if you are fair, in a democratic society like what you in Sierra Leone, it is absolutely the responsibility for if you see corruption in government, by all means report it. Now that makes we get investigative journalists then they spend months, sometimes a year too, for investigating particular thing. But when they report, when they don't produce their series, it is shake the government, it is shake the country because the facts of the report will be meaningful, but it will bring about change. Right. Not be what they call in this country, not practice yellow journalism, which is sensationalizing everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so waiting are also you advise to citizens, like with regards to their relationship with journalists. When journalists then they do their work, waiting na their own responsibility in that whole setting.
Well, this is an interesting question. The citizens' role in the country, now one for make sure say you get national cohesion to begin with, that you get an understanding of Uda Una be as a national entity. Uda Sierra Leoneans, who are we? Now the role of the citizen, for make you understand this, I don't know if they teach civics again in Sierra Leone, but civics are one of the things that they teach you, the citizen, your role as it relates to the government and the government's role as it relates to you. So the citizen enrolled with the journalist, now one way if therefore say if the journalist report a story where that person they feel to say that story they bias, you get the right to make you then you send a note to the editor of that particular newspaper there, or to the managing director of a particular television station and say, this reporting will not put there, we feel say a bias. And here are the different reasons that we feel to say this reporting is bias. Now, see if then people then they will react. If they don't react, you vote with your pocket, not buy them paper, not listen to them, and then they will begin to see as the audience they drop, they will know for say what they do, it's not correct. That make they don't lose audience. So the audience share for any journalist, then in primary responsibility, than the player.
Right. So definitely, yeah. So the issue of doing journalism in a country, reporting what they happen in a country, whether bad or good, is the responsibility of the journalists and the citizens as well. Therefore, vet waiting the journalists and the report. If they not report them properly, then get the responsibility for bringing out the facts them as they see them. So, Mr. Momoh, exactly. This takes us to another thing where during the LAJ saga, what happened at the country, we see where people that they talk about human rights and people that they talk about civil rights, but they talk more about human rights for say they don't violate LAJ human rights. You know, after when you look at the incident, how it happened, all the way to the time he was arrested by the police. So I really want for let you educate we as Sierra Leoneans, including myself, as to what's in the difference between human rights and civil rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sherix. That's a very good question. Now we start with a framework, basic framework. What's in human rights? These are the basic framework. Make I take this thing and read for you, which in the preamble to the the Human Rights Convention say. It said that whereas we disagree and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and the belief of freedom from fear and want. Let's just stop there. Freedom and from want. Now, me and you within America, and also,
yes, sir.
When we say in America, when people then in Africa or then someplace, and they say, people that in America, they get freedom. Yes, we get freedom. We get a lot of freedom in this country. But what is the first way we will teach them with students, we will teach them political science or civics. We tell them, a citizen get waiting. Number one, you get freedom, but then freedom, then they get things then what we call rights and responsibilities, duties. You get a duty as a citizen for make you do it. If you are right for vote, you get the right for go vote. If you right for making complaint to your government, then you right for make complaint to government, tell government which government don't do wrong. Waiting at the duties them we government get. Government get try to make sure for you the citizen that nobody don't infringe on your basic rights then. Okay? You have your freedom of movement, your freedom of association, your freedom of religious things. That one and the government don't infringe upon them. The government they just can arrest you and will lock you arbitrarily. These are things that we'll therefore look at. So now when we look at human rights, human rights they look at the issues and when they lead to that person there, that mortal man the way they deal with. Let's say mortal man with let's take LAJ, for example. People that talk to LAJ and human rights and violate. Why? Because they caught LAJ in here. Well, when they caught LAJ in here, which relationship LAJ in here get with LAJ in religion? Obviously, LAJ claims for say in a Rastafari, right? Well, the Rastafarians them don't believe in the kind of things the way LAJ they do, violence, committing of serious criminal acts. These are people who are peaceful. Why would Jamaica go up the parish side and people where they live? They are the most peaceful people. Of course, then they live and they're ganja smoking, but they don't bug anybody. The problem will get to people like LAJ. Now, where then they begin for take waiting an imported thing and then try to make it for say na something we belong. The societal context within Australia, not they allow for this type of thing. You can wear your dreadlocks there. But also remember, for Australia, we're culturally conservative. You know, there are things where they accept, there are things where they accept. Now, the problem is, so LAJ, cutting LAJs here, any lawyer will go after it in a human rights violation, no know what they talk about. Now, if somebody tell me, say, they violate that man in civil rights, perhaps we will look at them. But would I human rights and violate now? That bobo at that gas station, that man at that gas station, where they go beat. Women just try for make a living, where they go beat. Why make we not look at your own rights then? You know, anything where they deprive somebody from from life and liberty, the human rights violation. Anything we will take limb away, like what we get worn as alone, short sleeve, long sleeve. Those are human rights violations because I mean, they directly affect the well-being of that person and how that person will live in society. Now, when we talk about civil rights in this country, you remember the story of George Floyd, right? When that policeman killed George Floyd in this country, what did the Justice Department charge that policeman with? Not a human rights violation, right? They charge him with civil rights violations. Because the right for George Floyd for making him live in life as a citizen in this country without the fear of the police throwing him into jail or, in this case, killing him. Those rights were what the law enforcement people they trample on their rights and they. So that makes Minnesota, the state of Minnesota and Minneapolis particularly, they give such a huge amount of compensation to the George Floyd family. So let we not conflate the two. Human rights, when you take somebody in human rights, you starve them to death, you torture them. Okay? You get a long sleeve or short sleeve. Those are human rights violations.
Okay.
When you arrest somebody without cause. You don't violate that person's civil rights. Did they violate LAJ civil rights? I don't think so, because it commits a felonious offense. And the person who it commit the offense against called the police. And LAJ moved away from the scene. Therefore, he was a flight from what? Justice.
Right.
Right? So let me look at these things. Let me not put emotion. Let me just base the fact. Mr. Sherix, you and I, we live here in the United States. You mean know what LAJ even in Atlanta?
I not be ever know what.
I never knew.
I think in Maryland
So
every day.
Yeah, well, we leave Atlanta for some time. But why make where it go now in Sierra Leone, all of a sudden, LAJ don't become this superstar? For who? It's the question I keep asking.
Right. And so, Mr. Momoh, I want to let you also tell we, because plenty people in the way talk say, oh, LAJ, they don't arrest them, they don't put them in custody, family they don't go see them, they don't get access to them, so they don't go creeping here. This na human right they don't violate. But at the same time, I want to know where LAJ they go on video live. They do a live video with like thousands of people that they watch them. Where it cost mommy cause, it cost woman. Waiting na that, is that a civil violation of that person where they cause, or is it a cultural violation? Like, what is it? We really want to know.
So in this particular case here, because LAJ they live in a countryside, there are democratic freedoms where they allow the individual for making expressions without fear, or say somebody will trample on you, right? LAJ, despite the fact that I hate what LAJ they say, I know even they share the same values with LAJ. But in this particular instance, he has the right to say it. Now, the person where they say that one against, get the right for also bring civil action against her. But this is right. As long as you know yell fire in a crowded theater, it is his right to say what he wants to say. The person on the receiving end get the right for also either say something back or decide to use the court system for letting them go bring charges against her based on what he say. So no, he has the right. Again, he's an artist. There's that freedom that the government don't give them for letting them express themselves freely. Yes, he can do that. Now, when no more now, it don't pass mark, it don't go now way out of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
You know?
Right. So
enough to be a purveyor of hate, in other words.
Right. So when the incident happened at Sierra Leone, I mean, incidents that don't they happen. We even hear you say LAJ be don't slap policeman at police station or policewoman for that matter. After we don't commit crime, the crime go to the police, it slap policewoman. Then other thing and the way we don't they do, you know, nothing of the common I can say. But this particular one, like they don't go jump on this guy, we don't clean, not they just the pass na street, they don't go for go friend and living, again family. And then they go jump on him, then punch him in face swell up, the money bag within her hand, they grab him, then put petrol at the motor, they not pay for him, then go. Now, when journalists they report on this issue, we will not see them feature this victim, because the boy now be the victim. They not feature inside the interviews that whatever they do, or the reportings that whatever they do. How that one day go shed light on the type of journalism that we have in Sierra Leone?
Mr. Sherix, very good question. Let me call them what it is. That is bad journalism. That is not journalism. That is what we call in the books, we call that yellow journalism. It is to sensationalize things. Like I've been telling you, every story gets many parts and panel. The complexities, they're not there in this particular issue. What is complex about what happened there? Now, a straightforward issue, right? LAJ jump inside motor car, they go to a fuel station, they go get fuel. What do you do? He make them pump the fuel, he grab the money where the person may get, he flee the place that he had committed a crime. Mr. Sherix, you know, when me and you they go to a gas station here, will they see on the gas pump a picture of a state trooper when at the state police? No, so they say if you take petrol at this station, you don't pay for it, you don't commit a felony.
Right.
A Class C felony. What means that they go lock you up for between 6 months and 3 years in jail. So we live in one of the most civilized countries, right?
Right.
Why you trying to say if LAJ will be don't say he don't live in the United States, in no that one? Why make LAJ go to Sierra Leone? They go do the same thing they expect if you work free. It's not policeman. Who saw you go to police precinct and it's not police? Now, what thing will happen to you? Now, God no more know. Because you not go command at that place. Either you command inside a box or you command inside a body bag. Because they will say, now you assault them first. He was lucky. He got out. Sierra Leone tolerant. Then let them make you walk. Then after 9 times where a magistrate they try to get their attention, they're not sure, they will go arrest him. Who in the world does this young man believe he is?
Right.
I mean, I think say the government intolerance, perhaps we need to look at them a little bit more. Yes, they are doing things according to the book. But sometimes you have to step in and say, enough is enough. And I think say, now that no more my own beef with me government right now. Say, let the process go through. But let there be a very stern warning for say the government of Australia not will accept this type of behavior, felonious behavior again from anybody.
Right, definitely. And so when maybe the year where journalists then be focused so much on whether they ask this police officer as to whether they don't shave LAJ in here, as to compare to the crime where he don't commit, just like I would explain. You know, waiting go be your own explanation as or your own interpretation of the behavior of the journalists when they focus so much on LAJ in here than the crime actually will commit.
Well, again, the journalists them now then job them they do. They just do them in a bad way. Let's just face that. Them they do their job. They get the right to ask the official government person say, waiting this happen, how this happen, and waiting our government in opposition. Then they're right there. But they need for frame them in the proper context. If they're not frame in the proper context, what you say they happen, they're not going to get the correct answer.
Okay.
Right? And therefore, when they report, they will report something with bias. And that this bias now we need to take out of the journalism profession in Sierra Leone. Journalists, they need for report just within they see, within the facts. What are the facts?
Right.
Give me your facts. Let me, as the audience, make I decide which I want to do.
Because we hear so much of, we don't hear you say, when I don't creep in here, we don't hear you say, should they be talking like that? We don't hear you say, or they should go and find out themselves before they talk about it.
They have to go out and find out. Number one, finding out means that they need for research and find out which are the policy na Benghazi, where a new prisoner is when they bring come inside that facility there. We know for say, for example, in the United States, when somebody then commits within the prison system there, shaving the hair is number one factor because the hair creates a number of difficulties. One, I understand say LA giving a very long dreads. And from the police statement, they say it want for use and for commit suicide. If LAJ, God forbid, succeeded in doing that, what will we hear today? The human rights freedom they talk, in that case, it will be because they not monitor LAJ in the proper way where it didn't have their custody until LAJ do something bad to himself. But since they do this way for prevent that situation before occur, they did not commit anything except that they follow the standard operating procedures, SOP. If the SOP of the Benghazi jail say that this can happen, there should not be any reason why anybody for upset. Which journalists will get insult or a man to go ask a question like that, and all you have to do is show me within our standard operating procedures when it comes to situations like what you get LAJ. And that journalist for write a very beautiful story, but they did not do that. They want to sensationalize things and make the police look like for say that the police didn't do bad. They were just doing their job. So were they out there? Did they go out there to go look for LAJ? They did not. LAJ committed an offense. We make it interact with the police. Let's face it. That's it.
So Mr. Momoh, which example where you see LAJ as a musical artist, we get some following in Sierra Leone of the young people them where could potentially be the future leaders of Sierra Leone. The example where is set, where people they say na celebrity, that kind of example where say, who side they talk to police then roughly, they pointing hand at the police, they try for make like say one jump inside and can go jump at that police, they disrespect. Waiting that go teach a country.
First and foremost, I feel really say we need to send out a good word for the police. Mm-hmm. If the American police, they are the LGBT, they are the now different story we're going to talk about. The Sierra Leone police, we need to commend them for their patience, for letting them follow the rule of law. Mm-hmm. Even when this man they try to provoke them, they take them time for let them go through the policies and the procedures for arrest that mandate and bring them into the station alive. Mm-hmm. Kudos to the Sierra Leone police. LAJ's example, not the one where me go one for me, even me worst enemy, make it take them. Because LAJ not show anything when a good example. All the people there, when they try to say LAJ is an example for which is Sierra Leone artists them for be, they don't know which artist they're supposed to be. I have interviewed the likes of Angelique Kidjo. Mm-hmm. I interviewed the likes of Pepe Kale. I interviewed the likes of the late Franco. These were people who concentrated on their music. You never heard them go to the extent. The late Johnny Nash, when I'm from Houston, I spent quite a while talking to Johnny Nash, peaceful as you can find. Mm-hmm. So what you make LAJ all of a sudden for me say, now that you want to do, Mr. Sherix, not meaning that I want to bring personal thing, but say me, want me picking them, my wife picking. Now, a hip hop artist, he get that hair day.
Right.
But he's very respectful. They perform at clubs here in Houston. They perform at Austin. They go out of state for go perform. One day, you don't really say you don't disrespect anybody, even within the Australian community. These are the examples where me speaking of command now we go Sierra because in a hip hop artist in America, we reach the have to disgrace the family. We're not going to grip on that one day. I think say the family of LAJ get some good words and we need to share with them.
Yeah. So, Mr. Momoh, with regards to journalism in Sierra Leone, you get any resources where you could probably want share? So, in case journalists they want to improve their understanding of their job, where they go to?
Oh yes, indeed. Number one, I can give them one we're familiar with now. The Society of Professional Journalists, SPJ. They have a website called spj.org. spj.org. Go to that website. It will tell you what are the ethics of a journalist, what are the things that a journalist is supposed to do, how a journalist is supposed to cover a story. Subscribe to that website there. There are people like myself within a journalist. I mean, I didn't semi-retirement because I still do write. I still do other forms of writing. Mr. Sherix, you can give them, I don't have a problem. They can get me email address. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can get in touch with me. We'll say, I will for help them. The institution of myself where they teach there, they can go to that institution there in website. They can go to lonestarcollege.edu and they can also go to hccs.edu. Then to colleges, then they get basic journalism programs, or they can go to the University of Houston website and go look at the journalism department. These are all resources. I talk mostly from Texas point of view, but other states can get the same resources in Yasa.
Right.
And I'm sure that you get at one of the institutions or the higher learning, maybe maybe Jala, I don't know. But one of the institutions, and they must get a journalism school there. Their professors and need for put them in touch with retired journalists from Sierra Leone. Then we will also for help them, for facilitate their work, for let them work for report properly and accurately for all people there.
Yeah, because Mr. Sewa be working at the country, one of the things that I learned was that journalists them not they really do a research. Certain things and the way they happen, you get for research, on that kind of thing, and they force if a similar activity we don't happen in the past, where it happened, how they handle and then kind of thing, but then they do research. So I think it is very important that you don't provide this resource for them. So basically, waiting could be your advice to journalists them based on your academic your academic achievement in that area based on your experience as a journalist. What would be your advice to Sierra Leonean journalists in Sierra Leone?
Well, I think you don't touch on one. Before you discover a story, make sure, say, you don't know what's in the lay of the land of that particular story there. If they're a complex story, they come into bits and pieces which will allow you for making you see the big picture. Not just focus on one small side. That's not the thing why they tell me students and why they teach them. I say, when you want to write, before you even take the pen and the paper, or before you get on your laptop or even begin the first keystroke, ask yourself, what do I want the story for achieve? If you get a mind set for this story you want for make it achieve a political motive, then don't write as a journalist. Write as a political commentator. If you get the interest for say you want to inform, research what you try to write about. Say what are the good things there about this thing, what are the bad things then, and then when you put you write up together, it will be something where somebody will say, "Wow!" I know we know that one day. We call it the wow moment in journalism. Let somebody who don't read something say, "Oh my God!" I know we realize saying I saw this thing done. And that way they will get for do. You know, simple. Keep it simple. Not try for make what you're not able for do. Not try for hang you go to side you have not the reach. Don't try to emulate Western journalists. Then lens them when they use for report is different from the lens we use in Sierra Leone. For example, we don't conduct this interview totally today in Creole. Okay, if this interview you've been doing for a Western audience, now English will be talk throughout. Right. So we take this one as a good example for say we balance the scale and say we people them. We want for reach the vast majority of the people there. Therefore, let we talk in the language we then go able to understand. Let we not talk in a language we then for begin to say question and say what did he talk now? What did he mean now?
Right.
Yeah. So journalists then therefore come down to the level of the people there where they want to let them read their stories there. Not think say, oh, I get affiliation with this high-powered person, or I get affiliation with this minister. That not they help your story. It only give you access. But that access that you need to use them in a way that will benefit your readers or your viewers.
So, Mr. Momoh, finally, our last question is, how would they do na Sherix?
You don't ask me the question. You don't ask me the question. Wait for it. Every Sunday,
yes,
I take me picking them with a sit down na me chair and we put Sherix media now with TV, right. a big screen TV. We sit down there and they make sure for say I provide popcorn for them. I provide them with oranges. I provide them with some fruit.
Wow.
We get juice. We sit down. We they watch the program where it don't done. Then I ask them. I say, "What?" They sabi you. Then they say, "Oh, I know him." Because they can't host there.
Right.
They say, "Oh yes, Uncle doing a fantastic job." The things that he's talking about, I'm anxious to come to Sierra Leone to see. By God's power, what they continue for do, Papa continue for do. I mean, they do a fantastic job, and I hope so Sierra Leoneans them here and back at home, they will work towards supporting this because now the kind of journalism is what we need in the country. Free, fair, and objective.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Momoh. Ladies and gentlemen, this time, Mr. Matthew Momoh, of course, I know say we don't learn plenty one from him today. And I'm always available. So, Mr. Momoh, anytime we'll get critical issue for discuss, we will always bring you kind of also for talk to we. We want to say plenty thank you to you, sir.
I want to tell you thank you too. And I want to tell all man at Salon say, you know, we take patience for how we move the country go forward. We were the Naya, so everything where they happen and they affect me, just like we say what we do now, they affect me and we are let we come together as one country, let we work together, let we support His Excellency Dr. Julius Madabio, make this country USA is supposed to go. For too long since independence, we still struggle with light, we still struggle with basic infrastructure. This president don't come. They don't begin for change with lifestyle. It even encourage people in the diaspora for let begin for things say we need to go back and let we go help the country. Some of us we need to go ask for job. We want to go let we be job creators. So do ya, let we put your hand together as a lot of people there, and let we do what we need to do as good citizens of that country. Let we move this country forward. Thank you again, Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you very much, sir.